Running in the summer when it's really hot and humid is very, very difficult if you're training by heart rate. It's not something that I look forward to, and it's nothing that I'm sure that none of you guys are going to look forward to. However, that's the reality of it. In today's video, I'm going to talk to you about the devastating effect that heat has with your heart rate when you're using the Maffetone method. Don't let it destroy it. And today I'm going to show you how to not suffer. When you run on the asphalt, you have this elevated heat that comes off the road. Oh my gosh, it makes it so much hotter and harder to run when you're on the road. It's not often that you're going to hear a runner ask, what zone are you in? What is your beats per minute? What are you running? It's more common to hear, what's your pace, as a way of gauging how intense a workout will be. However, heart rate training uses, yes, you guessed it, heart rate or beats per minute as a guide for hitting certain running intensities. Instead of training at a specific pace, you use heart rate monitor to train at that specific effort, that level, for a set amount of time. The idea behind heart rate training is that you train your aerobic system without overstressing your skeletal and muscular systems. And when running in the heat, you really have to pay attention to this because your heart rate does rise when it's hot and humid. There's one sure way to absolutely destroy your running when you're training using heart rate, and that is the number one reason, and this is how you save yourself on the run. When you're training using heart rate in the summertime, when it's blistering hot outside and the humidity is through the roof, it's just not comfortable to run and your heart rate is elevated. And if you're anything like me, all you want to do is run, but you know that you've got this watch and this number that goes click up, 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 and you're like, what the heck is going on? There are a number of ways that you can fight back when you're using heart rate in the summertime. When you have come up with your Maffetone number, 180 minus your age, plus or minus 5 or 10 beats, depending on if you've got a medical condition, if you're overweight, if you're injured, or if you're coming back from an injury, stuff like that. I like to get out for a run early in the morning. However, you kind of have to wake up earlier and earlier as the summer goes on because the sun rises earlier. If you want to kind of beat the heat, then a good way is to get out before the sun rises. I mean, it makes for a beautiful run and it makes you kind of feel like you've accomplished something even before anyone is kind of up and out and about. It's really a nice way to start the day, I find. Now, another way that you can stay cooler when you're running in the summer is to find a place where you have a lot of shade. So if you're a road runner, finding something like this where you've got a lot of shade for long periods of time, the temperature difference is really huge. I mean, I noticed there's probably a good 10-degree difference when you're running in direct sunlight, whether you're in the shade. So if you can find the shade later on in the day, that will certainly help you to continue to run as opposed to walk. The other thing that you can do is run on the trails, run on greenery. Something else that I find really helpful is making sure you stay hydrated. If there is places where you can dunk your head in a stream or a river or use someone's hose if you're running in a neighborhood when you run by, that could really help save you as well. Staying hydrated is super important because when you stay hydrated, your heart rate doesn't rise nearly as fast as if you're dehydrated. And that's something that most of us should be doing, specifically in the summertime, because man, we sweat out a ton of electrolytes. When I'm dehydrated, my heart rate can fluctuate anywhere from about 8 to 15 beats higher than my MAF number, all because I'm just dehydrated. I like to practice drinking about 200 milliliters of water every 20 minutes, and that works out well for me, specifically when I'm out on these longer runs. Now, if I'm going out for a 5K, I don't worry so much about it, but when I start getting up a little bit above 10K, then yeah, I kind of really want to pay attention to what's going on. I can lose 4 pounds in about an hour just with my sweat rate. It is unbelievably crazy. I'm going to show you 2 runs that I've done, and I'm going to compare them both so you can actually see what the heck's going on. I wanted to compare running with walking 2 different days, the same temperature, and look at what happened. And I find this fascinating. I mean, there was only a 5-minute difference between running and walking. And the big takeaway at this, I wasn't expecting, was my kilometer 7, 8, and 7, 8, 9, 10 were faster when I was walking than when I was running. And, you know, 28 seconds, 10 seconds, 8, 14, okay, no big deal. But my heart rate was lower by like 11, 11, 12, 7 than the first half of my run where I was slower, but I was slower and my heart rate was much lower as well. So again, when you look at the two, you kind of go, so did it make sense to run when it was really hot, or should I have been walking at that time? And so I look at this and I think, you know what? I could have actually got probably more benefit just by walking than if I ran at my current fitness as it stands today. But the heat does make a difference between both of them. Now, again, if you look at the watts that I was putting out was 223 watts just by running and 205 when I was walking. My average heart rate was 127 when I was walking, and when I was running it was 145. Now, I was running as slow as I possibly could, and I was walking as fast as I possibly could. Strava has this stress score as 125 when I was running, and when I was walking, it was only 36. So basically, the lower it is, kind of like the lower intensity it is, it's no big deal. But when it's the higher the number is, you're suffering more, you're putting more out. And it's true, when you're running, it's kind of like you have this controlled falling and you're kind of like doing aerobic jumping kind of actions than when you're walking. So I contribute the higher heart rate to that portion of it as opposed to walking where I don't have that added extra. Now again, I'm not a scientist. These are just my observations as to what I'm finding when I'm running and walking in the heat, and to figure out which is kind of better to do. Again, your body doesn't know the difference whether you're running or walking. It just knows that this is where your heart rate is at. Something else that you can do to really bring down your heart rate when you're training in the summer. Look, I know all of you guys, some of you want to go ahead and run all the way up the hills. And I get that. I enjoy hill running too. But sometimes there comes a point where it's not a good idea. And summertime is one of those things. Yes, our heart rate can be higher on a normal day going up these things. But if you go ahead and you do a lot of baby steps, I mean, like we're talking baby shuffling, like anything slower, you are actually going to be walking. I know it can be hard, I know it can be challenging, but it does really bring down your heart rate. Because if you don't do that, you're going to be walking. Now there's going to be some of you that run in really hot, humid conditions, and that's going to be really hard for you. Look, I don't have a whole lot of advice to give you if you're down in the Caribbean, or if you're in South Florida or Texas, or places that's really hot like Spain and Portugal and, you know, Greece and other parts of the world, guys. It's just, you got to make the best of what you got to deal with. And sometimes you may have to walk. It's just the reality of it. Now, if you can find a nice treed area with a lot of shade, your heart rate can be a difference of about 10 beats a minute. And that's huge, specifically if you're trying to train using this method to get faster at the same heart rate. And I think this video right here will certainly help you continue your Maffetone training. Like I always say, get out and run. See you next week.